On this episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast, we talk about DEATHWESTERN by Spiritworld.
Yeah.
Yeehaw. I almost repeated exactly what I did before. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast. I'm Kale.
I'm OJ.
We're two professional broadcasters. We like metal and we like to talk about it. And today we are going back into the world of metal after a non-metal march to talk about Spiritworld's album DEATHWESTERN, which came out the previous November here. And they are I think probably I would just call them an extreme metal band.
Yeah, I mean, there's a heavy thrash component to this.
I've seen some publications call them a metallic hardcore band, which isn't inaccurate, but I don't think it gives an appropriate level of scope to all of their influences. And I don't think it's even it's not the largest portion of their sound either. Mm-hmm. I would agree with you that they're the largest portion of their sound is thrash metal, I would say. Mm-hmm. There's some crossover thrash in there. There's there's definitely like a large hardcore influence, but there's also some death metal influence. But there is a lot of thrash metal on this. And Slayer specifically
Slayer, late 80s, early 90s Slayer. That's the guitar sound and sort of style. And even some of the riffs are like, he probably played this riff and went, no, that sounds exactly like something off of South of Heaven. I'm going to have to alter it a little bit, but only slightly so that I don't get sued. There are a few riffs on there like that.
I mean, playing the open string or whatever. Yeah. At a certain point, you have to accept that if you're going to be doing this amount of chugging with this guitar tone, it's just going to sound like Slayer.
Right.
Like, if you're going to do the fast kind of chuggy guitar riffs
and the dive bombs
and all of the dive bombs, then it's going to sound like Slayer, and you just got to accept that.
Right, which, if that's your thing, that's not a bad thing to sound like.
This album sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And we'll talk plenty more about it a bit later on. First, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
It's good.
We're missing a concert, I think, right now.
Yeah. Because I think you definitely mentioned it before sometime, but I had forgotten about it. But there's a death metal band from Fargo, North Dakota.
Two from Fargo. Ice Grinder's also from Fargo.
Okay. What kind of band are they? Also a death metal band?
Yeah.
Okay, so there are two death metal bands from Fargo playing at, I presume, the O.
Yes.
Where else in Minot would they be playing at?
The Methodist Church.
Yes. But yeah, there are two bands from Fargo playing at a bar in town. Gorgatron and Ice Grinder.
Right.
Which I've listened to like the tiniest bit of Gorgatron.
They're good.
I'm sure it would be a lot of fun.
I actually saw one of their videos one time. They made a music video, and I get halfway through it before I realize, hey,
I've been there.
I know one of the dudes.
Of course you do.
It's my buddy Cliffy.
It's another human being from North Dakota. Chances are you probably know them.
You're from North Dakota. Do you know Cliff?
Chances are, if you ask some random person on the street, there's a decent chance that they do. The degrees of, you can only have so many degrees of separation. Like when I had the guys in here fixing my heat the other week, one of the guys I found out, because we were talking about where I was from, one of the guys I find out was my brother-in-law. Oh. My brother-in-law's older sister's neighbor, or used to be.
So you're practically related.
Basically, basically blood relatives. But no, it was weird because they're not even from my hometown. Like my brother-in-law's family is not from the same town as my family. They're from a town very close by. But
where are they from?
Turtle Lake.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so they're from a town quite close by. But like I said my hometown, which is a town called Washburn. And he immediately connects it to my brother-in-law's sister. It's like, that was a little bit of a leap, but he probably thought my name sounded vaguely familiar anyway.
Sure.
So I reckon that's where where his mind went, and was like, do you know who that is? Probably because he already figured I did.
Right.
But me sitting there was just like, that was, you skipped a couple of steps there as far as the connections, but it's a very small world out here.
It is. There's less
after
than
all.
Oh my God! I think that ride is being taken down. By the way, that ride is over. But
it's been a joke for such a long time.
I feel like everybody should take one trip through it just for the experience.
The last time I was at Disney World, that was like a threat. It was like a threat that we were going to go on that ride, and we didn't, because not even as a joke what were my parents willing to endure that themselves. But it is like a classic.
It is a classic, and that song with no other words than "It's a Small and World."
After all,
right. But the thing is, they play the song while you're in line for the ride.
Why?
They pipe it out to the line.
You're not,
and then you get on get a little gondola there.
Yep, and it keeps going,
and now it's louder. And now
it's like descending into hell.
Yeah.
You can hear you're being led down into the pits of Tartarus, and you can hear the screams of agony.
Right.
From high upon the cliffside that you are being marched down.
Right.
By some sort of demon.
Right. And then when you get down there, you see that it's your brother-in-law's sister's neighbor, and you're like, wow. It really is.
Small world. Wow. Hey, I know that guy. You're in hell too. What'd you do? What are you in for? Oh, you're everything? Yeah,
all
me
the
too.
Stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
Small world.
Yeah, small world. Yeah. Small world. Well, I think I'm in this pit over here.
Yeah.
This guy's gonna stab me a bunch with that pitchfork, so we better get to it.
Oh yeah. Oh, hey, this pit is actually quite comfortable. Hey, what is he doing here? Oh, you're coming to fix the heat? Okay, all right. Fine, great, thanks.
You work here. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm not going to get in your way. Can I go in a different room while you're... If you need anything,
right.
Just, don't be afraid to just come in and talk to me. But I'm going to be in a different room just playing some video games.
And in fact, if you want to raid the fridge,
go
right ahead.
Do you want some coffee? I can make some coffee. Anytime, like I made coffee for myself, and I thought about offering them some coffee, and I went, they're not going to drink it.
Right.
No one ever says yes. I don't know what it is. I can't picture a world where, you have maintenance in your home and you offer them coffee, not like water. You offer them coffee.
Right. So,
I don't know why, but I can't picture a world where that maintenance person says, yeah, I'll go for some coffee, because it just feels like that's
right. They're not here for hanging out.
Yeah. They're like, I'm here to do my thing. I've already drank. I work a trades job.
Yeah,
Do you know how much coffee I've consumed today?
In fact, at this point, I've switched to tequila already.
There's a 5-gallon thermos of coffee in my truck.
Right.
I don't want any of your coffee. I am deeply, deeply caffeinated already. But it's also like the only thing that I have to offer. I'm trying to be polite. I'm trying to be nice, but I can't, I can't help them. You're not supposed to help them, but I can't. I feel like a lump on a log, just like being absolutely useless. Because I am.
Well, I mean, this is really the nature of a civilized society. I mean, you can't do everything. You can do your job really well, and he can do his. If he showed up to your place, our radio station, and he'd feel like an idiot too, because hey, we're going to read the news and the weather and do this and write some spots and be like, I can't do any of that.
I think the difference is that it's in my home.
True.
I think that's the difference of context is that he's like, I have a guest in my home. It's like, no, they're not not really a guest. They're they're here to perform a service that they get paid for.
Right.
This is their job. This has ceased to be. That's the weird thing. It stops being your home.
Right, and it's now their place of business.
And becomes their workplace.
Right.
So you feel unwelcome in your own home for a little bit. Yeah, that like it's just there's an awkwardness to that I can't abide.
Yeah, because you're at someone else's job and you can't order anything. You're not there to do anything.
Yeah.
Like if you go into a place of business, you go into a work, you're there to say, hey, I want to buy this, or I want to have this service done, or I want to eat this, or I want to kill this, or whatever. And they
I want to kill this. What place is that? We're going to gloss over that.
Stouffer's Killing Grill. You pick one out, you kill it, we'll grill it.
Yep. Stouffer's?
I don't know why. I don't know why Stouffer's
like the frozen lasagna people.
Right? They have satellite stores where you can go to.
You can go and slaughter an animal yourself.
Yeah.
Do they have noodles there too?
Sure, they're frozen.
There? Okay.
Yeah, it's frozen pasta that you have to.
Fresh meat, frozen pasta. Right. Stouffer's. That's what they're known for.
Right.
There's a cat.
There's a cat again.
She's always around.
She's a cat.
Yeah. Cats tend to always be around.
Well, except I know somebody who just got a cat, like a rescue cat, and the cat has disappeared inside the house. And she hasn't seen the cat for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
She knows it's probably there because the food goes away.
Yeah. That's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's like I adore my cat, but I would love a bit of a balance between she is a bit of a balance, but it's weird because it's two extremes with her. Yeah. I feel like most cats tend to be a bit more of less the balance in the sense that both sides of the coin are amped all the way up, and more that they're both in the middle. Oh my God, she just jumped up into your lap.
She did. She's never done this before.
Ladies and gentlemen.
In how many years?
This is an incredible moment. This is unprecedented. We're in uncharted territory here.
Uncharted waters.
And she's come over to my lap.
That's all right.
But partially. There she is.
Goes, yeah. She started to dig her. Does she have back claws?
She does.
Okay. I was wondering.
I clipped them the other day.
Still kind of hurt.
Yeah. Well, she also presses down with all of her weight.
Right.
Like she presses down with her paws with as much force as her tiny body can exude whenever she doesn't fully lay down on something. She's got small paws, so it's it's a decent amount of force pressed into one area. But as I was saying, cats, I think oftentimes are a balance between aloofness and cuddliness.
Right.
Zima is generally, I would say, at the extreme of both ends, where she manages to make her preferred form of physical contact be aloof. Like, this is as personal as she gets with me.
Sure.
Where she just sits in my lap and I pet her. Like, she's not the type of cat that will if I lay down on my couch, she wants nothing to do with me. She will not climb up and lay on my chest or tuck in, by my side or something like that. A guy we used to work with, his cats would sleep on his face if he let them. Zima is...
He had some derpy cats.
Yeah, he did. But Zima will follow me into a room, demand my attention. But then she's following me everywhere and she wants my attention, but she... I don't know what she wants from me because I'll go to interact with her and she'll be like, no. It's like, what do you want from me?
I just realized something.
What?
This whole time you were describing your cat, I realized that the woman I was talking about earlier, that's how she describes me.
you're just like, I want to hang out. No.
Yeah. Okay, but sometimes I'll jump in your lap and you can pet me, and then suddenly I'm gonna run away for no apparent reason.
Or she'll try and bite me. She'll
still talking about the cat, right? Okay.
Sure. But yeah, like
I didn't know you two had met.
No. But like I'll be petting her and everything's going great, and just like at the drop of a hat, suddenly it's bite time. That's how she could get up and leave, but no, she stays where she is and bites. It's like
That's how she got her nickname.
Yeah, the blood god. That's what our D&D group calls her, because she's especially testy with anyone who's not me. Like
testy.
Even me, like she'll lose patience with and just go for the bite. With everyone else, it's a much shorter time frame of, all right, I've pet you for 5 seconds and now it's time for the bite or the swat. You are a weird cat.
She is a weird cat.
I think it is kind of a mix of like that sort of ingrained sort of like breed disposition that ragdolls have of being like, they call them puppy cats, essentially. Right. That disposition that they tend to have where they want to be around you all the time. It's just that most ragdolls are probably, a lot more well socialized than she was before I got her. So they're probably like, they're called ragdolls because you're supposed to be able to just pick them up and they go limp. That's where the name comes from, is they just go limp when you pick them up, and they don't mind being handled. She is not that way, because I don't think the people who had her before she was put up for adoption really socialized with her directly. They had a lot of cats, apparently.
So she was an adult, or a complete adult.
Yeah, she had kittens.
Oh, she was a mom.
Yeah, she had a couple of she had 2 kittens that were with her in the foster home that I got her from. But they were old enough to where I could just grab her, and they didn't have to come with, because I wasn't looking for 3 cats. I wasn't trying to have 3 cats.
And little kittens like that. I mean, we've had in our home kittens that were not quite weaned age.
Yeah.
And so we actually had to get a chicken coop and put it in the living room
for the tiny little
kittens, because it'll be dark in there if they just wander around. There's a lot of dangerous shit.
Yeah,
and plus we got to be able to feed them. You got to eye drop feed them, and
But she seemed to take it pretty well, being separated from them, and that I feel like the thought, because I don't know a whole lot about how old kittens need to be. They didn't look particularly big, but I feel like the foster service, the adoption service, probably wouldn't have let me adopt her if they weren't old enough. So I presume that was all kosher and good to go.
Right. They knew you just assumed they knew what they were doing.
Yeah. I assume that. I prefer to assume that other people know what they're doing.
Right.
And yeah, that's I feel like that's a decent way to be about most things.
Right.
There are some things I feel like it's worthwhile to be paranoid about and assume that people don't know what they're doing. Other drivers probably, I think it's a good default to assume that other people don't necessarily know how to drive. And so, you do an extra good job of driving well, using your indicators, making sure all the other fucking morons know what you're trying to do.
Right. Because the only thing you can control is what you do. So.
Yeah. People not using their indicators sets me off.
You mean their blinkers?
Blinkers, indicators. Some people call them indicators.
I suppose if you're Canadian.
I feel like it's not just a Canadian thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, it sets me off when people don't do that. And also, and this is something that fucking literally everybody does. I feel like I'm the only person that doesn't do this, where I, I stick to what I learned in driver's education, which is if you are going from a turning lane or whatever lane it is, and you're turning into another lane, you turn into the lane that corresponds to the one you're in.
Right. The closest lane.
The closest lane. Right. You don't go to the next lane over or several lanes over because that's how you fucking sideswipe people.
Right. I see cops do that here.
People on this fucking town do that all the goddamn time. Yep. And it's because we live in a place where the 95% of corners you can right turn on red.
Right.
At the same time that people are turning left. And they might have, a green arrow or something like that.
Right.
So those people are turning left, and there are people who are turning left that will go a lane over as I'm making a right turn on red because legally I'm allowed to do so, and it should be safe if those people followed the fucking rules.
Yeah.
I've gotten almost sideswiped so many goddamn times in this town because people are like, I'm going into the right lane. Fucking God.
You sound pretty mad about that.
Yes. Apparently I'm Canadian now. You know who's not Canadian?
Spiritworld?
Spiritworld. They're from Las Vegas, Nevada.
Las Vegas.
And I think they obviously lean much into the Western part of sort of the Western metal music scene.
At least with this album.
Yes. Yeah. And that's always been kind of their vibe. I mean, they wear like kind of cowboy outfits on stage as well. I
wonder if these guys know my friend Shannon Fry.
I don't know. Maybe.
He's a metal drummer down in Las Vegas.
Maybe. But in any case, there is a pretty expansive like metal scene in the U.S. Southwest.
Right.
That has kind of its own sort of hallmarks and as far as like extreme metal, like the biggest one that I can think of from the Southwest and Mojave, Sonora area is, oh no, their name immediately disappeared from my brain. Gatecreeper.
Oh, sure.
Being, maybe it's just because I know they're from Arizona and like they've had, album titles like Deserted.
Yeah.
But like something about the sound, it sounds dry. I don't know why. It sounds dry and warm.
Dry and hot.
There's just something about it. I think it's a good combination of album art that just sort of evokes a Southwestern feel. There is kind of a feel to a lot of these like extreme metal bands.
They're kind of spicy
from the desert Southwest.
By the way, that's another thing you should do.
Spicy?
What go walk through at least one of the nice deserts, or just plain deserts at all in the Southwest.
Yeah, at some point I need to. I would love to do like some national parks walkabouts at some point.
Yeah, the vegetation wants to kill you.
I've wanted to do national park trips for a while, but I have no self motivation. I have no drive, and it's also like because like especially during the summertime, depending upon what park you go to, going to a national park alone and remaining alone is maybe not the best idea for your health. If you're going to like Glacier or some, anywhere where there are bears or mountain lions, walking around alone is maybe not the best idea in the world.
Right. You need somebody to push down.
You need somebody to run faster than.
Yeah.
Which that's not going to happen with me. I feel like just about anybody could outrun me.
Right.
I do not run. But we were talking about Spiritworld.
Right.
So Spiritworld is from Las Vegas, and they have a very heavy, I would call it, because I mentioned this to you earlier today, a Weird West theme.
Sure.
Because what immediately comes to mind, especially from the album art, from a lot of the lyrics, it really evokes a lot of the things that I know which is not a lot of things. I'm only passingly familiar with a tabletop RPG called Deadlands. And it's not even really a tabletop RPG. It is a setting that has been featured and converted to a number of different RPG systems throughout the years. Like the setting was created in the late 90s. And
it's like a D20 thing, or is it
well, it's been published. It has been published. It was using a D20 system for a little while. It's also used GURPS. And most recently, the most recent version is a system called Savage Worlds that it uses. But it is this alternate history, like weird West setting where you have cowboys and you have zombies and demons and there's magic. And it's like, I can't remember the exact thing, but it's like, it's the 1870s and suddenly there's magic and necromancy and shit. And you're out somewhere in the Wild West and you got to deal with it. And there's like a looming apocalypse that might be happening, and there's all these supernatural forces that have emerged. And it's apparently it strikes me as a really deeply interesting setting, and something like, and I mentioned to you, is like it would be fun to do like a quick like 1 to 3 shot campaign of like playing Deadlands, but it's 1870s Dakota territory. Like that would be kind of neat.
Like the Badlands.
But, you're out in the Badlands. You're out in Medora or something, and you run into Teddy Roosevelt. I don't know.
Only it's zombie Teddy Roosevelt.
Zombie Teddy Roosevelt.
Right.
There is a mini series that Critical Role did a number of years ago called Undeadwood, where I think they were playing. Deadlands. I'm not entirely sure. It was an extreme Deadlands vibe, but it was Deadwood as it appears in the show Deadwood, not necessarily, historical Deadwood, but it was Deadwood as it appears in the show with the characters. But you have, player characters coming into Deadwood in the middle of this. There's, suddenly there's zombies that have shown up and there's these weird things that are happening. And that was really, really good. Undeadwood is a fantastic, nice and short actual play RPG series.
Undeadwood.
It's really cool. I really liked that one, but
I need to watch the actual show. I've been paying for HBO Max for how long now?
You absolutely should watch it.
I've only seen the first episode, and I don't know why I didn't watch anymore. I enjoyed it.
It's so good. It's a really, really fucking good show.
Yeah.
The cast is outstanding, and just the plot is really engaging. And the movie that came out a few years ago was a really great way to, it's weird to say, a really great way to wrap things up, because like season 3 basically wraps things up, but it kind of leaves a couple threads hanging, and then like they do a decade time jump for the movie that does manage to like wrap things up. And I can't remember, like somewhere in season 2 the show stops being historical.
Sure.
Other than like most of these characters are historical people, but like the events of the show become entirely fictionalized somewhere.
Sure.
Maybe even late in the first season. But it's fantastic. Deadwood's an amazing show.
Like I've seen that scene where Bill Hickok has the robotics lab.
Yes.
Yeah.
Keith Carradine is cyborg Keith Carradine.
Yes. I felt that was probably, fudging it a bit. But,
just a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
Timothy Oliphant pulls out rocket-propelled grenade. It's like, where'd he get that?
Oh, man.
Marshall, what is that thing? Here's my rocket launcher.
I saw it in a movie.
What the fuck is a movie? That would be fucking Al Swearingen. What the fuck is a movie?
And Al Swearingen is played by what's his name?
Oh God, it popped into my head and then you looked at me and it disappeared.
He's actually British, right?
Ian McShane.
Yeah.
And he's 100% steals the show every second he is on screen. Every single moment he is on screen in that show, he is the best thing. that you can watch. And that's saying something because the entire rest of the show is amazing.
You know, I actually have a friend of mine who has gone down to Deadwood several times in search of his ghost.
In search of Al Swearengen's ghost.
Yeah.
Be a piece of work. And it's funny because at least according to historical accounts, the version of him in the show is nicer than the real guy. And if you've watched Deadwood, you know what that means. Because in the show, he is a monster most of the time. He's got some nice moments, some humanizing moments. Apparently, in real life, he was just a massive piece of shit who just happened to have enough money to own a few prime plots of land. But that's enough about Deadwood.
Spiritworld.
So as we mentioned, this album's genre is maybe a little hard to nail down.
Right.
There's definitely a lot of different influences going on. But by and large, this is, I would say, a certain kind of thrash metal.
Right. I mean, there's even some new metal.
A little bit.
Sprinkles in there, yeah.
I think in the, like, there was... To me, the new metal that I would identify is that the vocals oftentimes remind me a little bit of Corey Taylor.
Oh, sure.
There's some Corey Taylor in those vocals in the sense that like they tend to be shoutier. The vocals, I think, carry a lot of the sort of hardcore element of their sound because it is a type of vocal that I associate with like 90s onward hardcore punk, where it is more intense and it is grittier than the sort of yelling and shouting that you'd hear in like 70s and 80s hardcore punk, but it's not, it doesn't have the sort of growl or the sort of guttural kind of gurgly noise that you associate with a death growl, and it doesn't have the intensity or the various pitches that you think of when you think of like metalcore screams or deathcore screams or anything like that. To me, it's very identifiable as like, oh, that sounds like something you would hear in hardcore. But there's some Corey Taylor elements to it that made me think that way. And like, I feel like almost any like album like this that you make that is not like immediately like, this is that genre. There's going to be some new metal in there because that's what this generation of musicians that are like coming up and making music sort of came up with when they were younger. That was the big thing. And so that's, an influence that a lot of people carry with them.
Right.
Musicians that are probably a bit older than me, but like, in the decade that's older than me, I would say, pretty much anything they make is going to be in some way influenced by new metal, I would think.
When were these guys born? We don't know their age.
I don't know. I did see the sort of mastermind behind the band is a guy named Stu Folsom. Right. He's the vocalist, and he's got some gray in his hair. But that can be kind of hard to place, but I would say 30s-ish. Okay. Somewhere in their 30s, I would imagine. He's done a couple other projects. This is his sort of second big project, I think. There was another project he was in that was just called Folsom. Because Stu Folsom is not his name. I think Stu Folsom is kind of like almost a character he plays on stage. Sure. Because there is a whole fiction to this album and like the setting, which is part of what made me, think of Deadlands is the fact that there is kind of this whole sort of hyper violent supernatural horror element going on in this sort of Western setting. So I think the band kind of plays characters on stage when they're performing. I think they're at least the main guy of the band is a little bit older. There's like supplementary material for this. I didn't do a lot of like looking into this until today. So I didn't have time to like really dig into stuff, but there's like short stories that got published to go along with this album about like the setting that this takes place in. Like there's a whole fiction here, and it's like the vibe to me is like if you took like and combined with the music, it's like if you took like Lamb of God and Slayer and like Hatebreed or something like that, and like smashed them all together,
apparently Slipknot.
And then or Slipknot, and then like slathered a coat of Red Dead Redemption paint all over it.
Right.
And the cover art.
Great.
The cover art is amazing to the point where it's like I almost wonder if it's done like I imagine the artist that did the cover art for like the Red Dead Redemption games is probably someone who just works for Rockstar.
Right.
But it just looks so similar to me that I have to imagine that when they commissioned this art for this album, that they were like, could you make it look like Red Dead Redemption a little bit?
And also, let me tell you, one thing that I think of when I see this is going to second-rate carnivals when I was a kid.
Okay.
And there'd always be some sort of crazy horror ride.
Yeah.
That you'd go on, that this would be out front. This would be the art on the front of that.
And then it would just be some like half-assed dark ride.
Yeah. with a it's a skeleton that's been repurposed with a cowboy hat.
It's the carnival version of like really shitty B movies that have amazing like painted posters.
That's the best thing about it.
Cover art. Like there's so many terrible B movies that have amazing posters.
Right.
That are just so lovingly detailed and painted. And this is like the same goes for Red Dead Redemption as well, where like that art style, didn't originate there. It's all meant to evoke classic, spaghetti Western movie posters. But for me, that's my big cultural touchstone for Western fiction. And I feel like there's probably a lot of people my age that feel the same way. Where like, most people my age probably haven't watched The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly all the way through, because it's also an extremely long movie.
That's a good movie.
It's an amazing movie. It's so fucking long.
And if you ever get the chance, watch one of the Clint Eastwood.
The Dollars Trilogy?
Yeah, the Dollars Trilogy.
I mean, Good, Bad, the Ugly is one of them.
Right, yeah. But I mean, watch the other ones.
The whole thing, yeah.
Yeah.
But like, for like my favorite Western movie is Unforgiven.
Sure.
Because Unforgiven is a bit more digestible. I think it's still a pretty long movie. Yeah. But the pace, I think, is pretty good in Unforgiven.
And it's more modern, because that's from 1985, I think.
I think it's the 90s.
Is it the 90s?
It's somewhere in the 90s.
Unforgiven was in the 90s?
Yeah. Yep. Because Clint Eastwood was already looking kind of old.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the man was born in 1933, I think.
He's just genuinely an old guy. Yeah. But Unforgiven is somewhere 1992.
Oh, it's 92? Really? Yep. Came out after I graduated from high school.
Yeah, but like that's my favorite Western movie. I really love that movie.
That's a great movie.
But
you're not wrong.
It's the album art is just gorgeous, just amazing. You got this like demon looking cowboy with like glowing red eyes. And he's got the little cigarette, and then there's this like green naked witch lady.
There's a pile of burning bones.
There's a Native American lady riding a wolf. Like,
yeah,
it's fucking awesome.
There's some sort of monsters floating, against the backdrop of the moon,
flying imps and shit.
Well, there's two moons.
There's a white moon and like a blood moon.
Right.
It's fucking awesome. The album art kicks so much ass, and I think it is one of those things of like, you see that album art and exactly like okay, I guess I wouldn't say exactly, but like you read, I feel like if you knew nothing about this band and you see that album in like a record store, you see the art, you read the album name that says DEATHWESTERN, I feel like exactly what it's going to sound like.
Right.
I feel like there's no false bill of goods being sold to you when you look at that album art.
Right.
It's like, oh, I know what this is. It's not like one of those like there's a trend, in the last 5 years or so of like certain artists using like metal logos, using like metal influenced logos for things.
Sure.
Just as a stylistic choice, which I think is fine, generally speaking. Like I don't have a massive problem with it, but I feel like if you're someone who's like a big metal fan and you're like me, where occasionally you go into a record store and you just grab shit that looks interesting and you're like, oh, I'm pretty sure this is metal. Sure, I'll grab that. And then you put it on, you might be a little disappointed.
Right.
But that I don't know how often that really happens. But
so we used to go by label when I was, what label is this on?
Yeah. Is this on Earache?
Yeah.
Is it on, was Nuclear Blast a thing back then?
Yeah, that's been around a long time.
Been around for a while.
How
long has Metal Blade been around? They've been around a while.
Metal Blade is an offshoot of Atlantic Records.
Okay.
I mean, all these little like Combat and Metal Blade and all those things are really owned by the the big labels.
Epitaph.
Yeah.
Roadrunner, so on and so forth.
What was John and Marcia Zazula's album? What was their label? Was that Earache?
I don't know. I got no idea. I don't even know who you're talking about.
They're John and Marcia Zazula. They are the ones that discovered Metallica and Anthrax and stuff like that.
I feel like that might have been Roadrunner, but I don't know. I'm not deeply familiar with the history of Metallica, so I wouldn't quite know.
Yeah, because I remember seeing an interview with him saying, "Boy, those guys can really drink. They're talented, but they can drink. Man, can they drink?"
Do you think this album slaps?
Yeah.
Yeehaw, it does.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it slaps like a slap on the backside of a horsey. What the fuck is that sound sample in that one song? Or it's
you have to narrow it because there's a lot of sound samples in this.
There's one where it's like, how do you feel? It's like, I feel like, God, I can't remember.
Megaforce Records.
Megaforce Records.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like something hard riding, hard fucking son of, or something like, it's just, there's a lot of really neat sound samples in here. I wasn't able to like compile a score from a lot of different publications because I think like there were a lot of different publications that talked about this album, but there are not a lot that like gave it a score.
Right.
So I wasn't able to put one together. Generally, it seems like the reception was positive, but not like overly positive. It wasn't. I didn't get the vibe of critical acclaim. But just people going like, yeah, this is pretty damn good. What's your favorite song?
Okay. I really like the first two, Deathwestern, the title track, and Relic of Damnation. And I think the next one that really, because they found a thing they do really well and they do that thing.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the songs run together a bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
But the next one I really like is Moonlit Torture. That's a great song. And I also liked 1,000 Deaths was a wonderful song as well.
One of the things that they do really well and they do over and over again is the whammy bar dive bomb.
Yeah.
Which is, I think any casual metal fan will be able to identify with Slayer.
Yeah. This guitar player definitely loves Slayer.
They do that whammy bar dive bomb on almost every song, and usually right at the beginning, alongside the opening riff, there is a occasionally it goes up.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's going down.
Yeah.
They do it a lot. It's great. It's a great flavor, but it's like, there's another one.
There you go.
My favorite song is The Heretic Butcher.
Yes.
Something about the chorus of that just gets me fucking amped. It just sounds, it sounds really badass. I can't remember the exact lyric there on The Heretic Butcher, but it's something here. Let me see if I can pull it up on Spotify. Spotify does not have the lyrics.
Nope.
But yeah, it feels pretty badass for some, like on the level of, there's another song called I can't remember the name of the band all of a sudden. Guardians of Asgard, but I can't remember the name of the band. They're the Viking metal band.
Oh, sure. Oh,
Amon Amarth.
Amon Amarth, thank you.
Guardians of Asgard has that other vibe of like getting fucking amped. It sounds badass. Also, the Heretic Butcher sounds like the title of like an Inquisitor in Warhammer 40k.
Right. I am the shield. I am the sword. The butcher of the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like something of that just sounds just fucking sick as hell, man. It sounds sick as, man, bro. Sounds sick as.
Sick ass.
Oh yeah.
Why?
Terrible. Let's just say Southern Commonwealth.
Right.
I'm not gonna claim that was Australian or New Zealand. That's just one of those two.
Right. It's stereotypical.
Maybe in the ocean betwixt them. Perhaps.
Maybe Tasmanian.
Tasmania is not between them, unfortunately. It's an uncharted island between Australia and New Zealand, where one guy lives.
Only one guy lives on Tasmania?
No, I'm talking about this imaginary place where the shitty accent I did is from.
Tasmania is uncharted?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why we know what it is and where it is and what to call it. It's because it's uncharted.
Right.
No, there's plenty of people who live in Tasmania. There's also really big crawfish there. You know that? There's crawfish that are the size of like big lobsters.
Nice.
They're endangered.
Right. Because they're big, tasty bugs.
Yes. That's a big old mud bug. All right. What medal are you bestowing upon Deathwestern like Maz Kanata to Chewbacca?
I've thought really hard about this, and I'm sort of torn. I mean, I think I'm going to give it a high silver.
Okay.
I think it's where it's going to be because I don't know how much more I'm going to listen to this.
Yeah.
I will listen to it again, but
I would agree with you there. And I think for me, it is
a high silver.
Hey, I would love to see what this band can do in this style and like how they can further this type of music, because I feel like it just needs to get dialed in just a little bit more, maybe a little more variation in the riffing, a little more experimentation, maybe leaning on the Slayer influence a little less,
sure,
and doing something that sounds a little bit more distinct. Not that this doesn't sound already distinct, but I think they could make their sound more distinct. I think they could do that by incorporating the Western elements more directly, because as it stands, it's mostly like interludes and like the Western and country music portions of this album are very quarantined to their own little sections or sound samples. And I feel like they could kind of panopticon it a little bit and figure out ways to incorporate those sounds more directly in the song structures themselves. I'd like to hear that because I think it will be pretty neat.
Because I've heard a lot of banjo in my lifetime.
Yes,
and a lot of the banjo picking. If you put an HM2 pedal on that sumbitch,
I mean,
and you picked it that way.
That's how fucking Brent Hines learned to play banjo before he played guitar.
I suppose, yeah.
And that's why he sounds the way he does on guitar. The reason he sounds the way he does as a person is a combination of marijuana use and brain damage.
Yes.
But anyway,
because you see older pictures of Brent like from 2001, after Remission came out.
Yeah.
He looks like a regular person.
Yep.
But you see pictures of him now, and it looks like, yeah.
Yep. Although it's kind of funny because there's those pictures, and then there's like the outfit that he wore in the while they were filming, because he was just in the studio doing vocals for the song Toe to Toes, and he was like impeccably dressed. He was wearing like a vest and this really nice shirt, and he had these really cool like gold rimmed glasses. He was like really, really well dressed, and he was just coming into the studio to record some vocals, and they were recording documentary footage for I think because it was while they were in the midst of sessions for Emperor of Sand, that they recorded that song.
And I feel like actually some of that is a persona that's put on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's it's some of it.
Yeah.
Like I think I think he's just kind of amplifying what is already there.
Right.
And just having fun.
Because you watch some of those documentaries about Mastodon and the camera will go on him and he won't know the camera's on him, and you can tell he's very well in the moment and focused and you know, being a very serious musician, and then he'll see the camera and you'll see him sort of
loosen up a little bit
like dirty behinds again.
It's time to be the weirdo. I think he's just kind of turning himself up a little bit. But anyway, that is it for this episode, for the discussion. As is so often been the case, I haven't thought super hard about what I want to listen to next week, so I'll figure that out.
All right.
In the interim.
All right.
Sorry for anybody who like listens along and you know, prepares for the next album.
What are you doing?
I think it's fine. I think it's a perfectly fine thing to do.
Sure, okay. Yeah.
But you know, I'm sure that's maybe a little frustrating to be like, he doesn't know what he wants to do again. But I just nothing had come to mind. I wasn't thinking super. I got other stuff, you know, that gets in the way sometimes.
Right. You got, you know, money and bitches. You gotta That's your money. That's what your mind is on all the time.
They need me. They need me, you know. It's a hard life managing those two things.
Yes, exactly.
My massive amount of money and my harem.
It ain't easy, but it is necessary.
Exactly. Somebody's got to do it.
Right.
What would they do without me? So until next week's episode, why don't you go ahead and follow us on Twitter or Facebook, and you know, you'll get. What was that?
Bully.
Are you zombie Teddy Roosevelt?
Yeah, I'm zombie Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay.
Closing out the episode here.
Okay. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and you know, we'll make posts when new episodes come out, and that might be your preferred way of getting notified. Otherwise, just subscribe to our feed on whatever it is you're using to listen to us. So thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Bronze Metalist Podcast. I'm Kale.
I'm OJ. Congratulations.
That was more of a ghost noise than a zombie, and you know it.